Let's get started on our juicy, vibrant strawberries. I have for you my inspiration photo, my line drawing that you can trace just to make the drawing process easier. Here's my drawing gum, my masking fluid. I just put a little tiny bit on my little plate. Rub my brush in some soap to help protect those brushes from getting gummy and ruined. I just put that masking fluid where I want to keep my painting white. This can be a slow process, but it's really worth it in the end. It just helps us as we paint our darker layers just to keep those little teeny spots free from paint. Just take your time. I'm using a very tiny brush because my details are very little. After a couple of minutes, I wash my brush, rub it in the soap one more time, and keep going. That helps you from ruining your brush. I'm using yellow ochre, permanent red deep, Alizarin crimson, Moonglow, sap green, and a little serpentine green. Even if you don't have these colors, just use the colors that you have. I'm using a warm red. My permanent red deep is a warm red, and my alizarin is a deep cooler red. So you just use the colors that you have. If you only have one red, you just use your one red, and you can use other colors like a purple or a blue to make it deeper. You can use a yellow or an orange to make it warmer and brighter. These just happen to be the colors that I have and colors that I have learned how to use. Now I'm dropping in my deep red. I'm going to kind of build some of that shadow and dimension. That warm red will pop out as it dries. Taking a little paper towel, I'm just blotting out a little area on the top that's going to be a highlight. Mixing a little bit of my Moonglow. I think I still have a little red on that brush, but that's okay. I'm just making those shadows a little deeper. This wet on wet technique, it just helps those first layers blend softly, and it just gives us a good base to start with. I started this painting off with a number 10 round brush. Now we're going to work on our second strawberry. We're going to go through the same exact steps. We're going to start off with our warm red, get a good layer of that down. Just wanted to build up the vibrancy a little bit more. It's fun building the first layer of shadow, because once this first layer dries, you already have some dimension there. But as we progress, we'll just keep building on those layers and creating more and more dimension. So in the end, you'll have a realistic looking strawberry. Just adding in a little more warmth in that first strawberry. Tap out that highlight. Using my hair dryer to dry that first layer to help speed up the process so I can get moving on the next step. Having the warm red pop out on the top and the cool red more of the shadow, it really does give our strawberry a lot of character and dimension. I just slowly build those shadows. Just kind of keep building them until I'm satisfied. Now we're going to do our first shadow underneath our seeds. We still have our masking fluid on there, and we're just building those shadows. It's going to help give those seeds a 3D effect when we're done. And leaving the masking fluid on here just helps you that you don't have to be quite so careful yet. And not every seed is going to have exactly the same shadow. So some are going to be lighter and some are going to be darker. We're going to build the shadow on the seeds a little darker on the base, on the bottom of our strawberry where it's more shadowed. I use the Moonglow mixture on the bottom, and I use more of the warm and cool reds at the top to kind of give it that variation. Now I'm just taking my brush, I'm wetting it, and I'm just kind of scrubbing out some little highlights there. And each time I do that, I rinse my brush, make it clean, drop in a little water and scrub and tap that out. That's just kind of creating a little bit of a highlight on the top of the seed. I'm just picking a few areas to do this technique on. Each little step that we're doing is going to really help create that 3D effect. We're just going to keep doing that same technique on the other strawberry. I'm going to use my hair dryer to dry those last layers, but also it warms up that masking fluid, so I can just take my eraser and it just rubs out really nicely. It doesn't tear the paper, it kind of softens and makes that masking fluid more pliable and easy to take off. So now we see our seeds are just popping out. They're a little bit white, so I'm going to kind of just mix a yellow. I took a little bit of my yellow ochre and a little bit of my Moonglow, and then I realized that's a little too dark for the top, so I just kind of blot it out. I'm going to take a little more pure yellow ochre and make it a little watery. So seeds on the top are a little bit lighter, so sometimes we make little mistakes, but usually we can fix them. Then as I start working on the seeds on the shadowed area of the strawberry, I bring in that darker yellow. And we'll just keep doing this until all our seeds are painted. Got a pretty small brush here. I'm using a round 05 spotter brush from Princeton Select. I don't really use really expensive brushes. I'm kind of a frugal person, so I try not to spend too much money on my brushes, and so far I've really liked the brushes that I've bought. They're still good brushes. I just kind of keep myself on a budget. I'm going to give that seed a little dimension, so I'm bringing in a little bit of burnt sienna with my yellow ochre. It'll kind of help keep that vibrancy. And I'm just going to kind of shadow underneath the seed, kind of within that seed, just the underneath part. And once again, I'm not going to do it on every single seed, but I'm going to kind of pick and choose just to add a little detail there. Don't want it to look too uniform, so I might skip a seed here or there. I'm going to make those shadows a little bit darker on the underneath of the berries. Kind of making a few of the little seeds that you don't really see the detail, but you might see the little spot where they're at. If you've seen any of my other tutorials, you'll know that I really love my Daniel Smith Moonglow. It's kind of a purpley blue gray. When you're using it for shadows, it just helps create that shadow without making it dull. Kind of gives it a little bit of interest. I stay away from black and I stay away from Payne's gray for my shadows. You really want your shadows to continue that dimension that you have in the rest of your berry. And I just find that Daniel Smith Moonglow does the trick. I'm just going until I'm satisfied with all my shadows. I'm just deepening the color around my seeds with my reds. This will really help those seeds look like they're inset into that strawberry. And now we finally get to come to our stems and our leaves. I'm going to start off just pre-wetting my stem. I'm going to use a little bit of my Serpentine green. If you don't have this color, you just take your sap green and maybe a little, just take a little bit of another yellow and just mix them to make a lighter green. Because I want the stems to be a little different color than our big leaves off to the side there, we want them to be able to show up against those leaves. Just adding in a little of my sap green. Here I decided to use a little white gouache for a few little highlights on the seeds. Just picking a few seeds to do this highlight too. When you're working on detail this little, it's hard to keep areas completely white. And it's okay to use a little white gouache or a little white watercolor. Now you could just leave these 2 strawberries as is. I'm taking my waterproof Micron pen. It's a 005, and I'm just adding in just a little detail here. In the end, when we get those other leaves done, it'll just help the stems really pop out from those leaves. And if you wanted to just leave the strawberries as is and not worry about the background leaves, you could totally do that. I would just add a little shadow underneath your strawberries, which we'll do at the very end of this painting. I just laid in my water, and I'm just putting in my sap green for my first layer of leaves. I started off with my number 10 round brush, and now I'm just taking my little spotter brush, kind of building in around those details of the leaves. Just dropping in a little bit of shadow. We're going to kind of continue to build the shadow as we go. With each leaf, we're just going to continue the same step in the same colors. I'm kind of skipping leaves so that the colors don't bleed into one another from leaf to leaf, so we keep a little bit of definition between those leaves, but we're going to be using the same colors in each leaf. Kind of create that shadow of that overlapping leaf. I just build my shadows slowly, wet on wet, just to keep those shadows soft. We don't want our shadows to be harsh. I'm going to drop in a little yellow ochre. I'll just give those leaves a little more interest, a little more dimension. Now we're going to work on our last 2 leaves. Just take a little of our sap green, add in a little more detail. We want our detail to be pretty subtle because we want our strawberries to be the center of attention. I'm going to take a clean brush and I'm kind of lifting a little color out of my stem. I want that to pop out a little bit more from those background leaves. Still leaves a little color there, which is really nice, but it just brings that highlight back out. It helps them show up. We're taking off our last of our masking fluid. We're going to work on our little flowers. They're very small and delicate. We're not going to be using a whole lot of color, but my palette's gotten a little bit full here, so I'm just going to kind of clean off my palette a little bit so I can work on the very last of my painting. I'm going to take a little bit of my Moonglow. I'm going to make it very watery. I want my little shadows on my flower to be extremely soft. The flowers are white, our little strawberry flowers. But to get a little definition in there, we have to add some shadow. And if you don't have Moonglow, you could do a very watery purple, or mix maybe a little bit of a blue and a little bit of a purple together, but just keep it really watery and soft. I'm just building that definition a little slowly, adding a little shadow underneath the flower. I just kind of wanted to soften those edges just slightly, so I take a clean brush with some water and I'm just softening my flowers a little bit. Now I'm going to take a little Azo Yellow. It's just a nice, bright, warm yellow. I'm going to work on the center of my flowers. Now I'm just taking a little bit of yellow ochre, adding in a little bit of shadow in the middle of that flower. Dry those a little bit, and then I'm going to add just a little more yellow ochre just to gain a little more depth in the center. This tiny detail. Adding a little bit of my serpentine green into the center, kind of around the edges. Defining my petals just a little bit. Once that dries, I'm just taking my Micron pen again, just adding in a little more detail there to kind of help the stem leaves kind of pop out from those background leaves. And I'm just going to add little veining, just slight detail in those leaves. You could totally leave this out. You could use a little liner brush and a little darker green to create this detail. For me, I just like a little bit of that crisp line the pen makes. I turn my paintings into greeting cards, so it just kind of helps add that last little bit of detail that looks really good once these are printed out. You don't want it to be glaring. You don't want to say, oh, well, that sure has a lot of pen in it. I just want it to stay very soft and subtle, where you almost don't notice it, but yet it makes a difference. And then our very last step is going to be adding our shadow underneath our strawberries. This just really helps finish it off, it gives those strawberries the last of their dimension. It makes them pop off the page, makes them look like they're real. It helps finish off that 3D effect that we've been going for all along. Just using my Moonglow, I start off really soft and I'll just kind of build the color around the edges as I go. As the watery Moonglow dries, it'll kind of gradiate and you'll see some of the purple and the blue and a little bit of the green. It's kind of a teal color in there, and it makes the shadows really pretty. And there you have it, your 3D strawberries. I hope you loved this tutorial and that you're going to give it a try.